Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty heated claim, one that really sits at the crossroads of politics and economics. It's an accusation that one of the most watched numbers in the entire U.S. economy was deliberately messed with. And there it is. That's the central accusation, a direct quote from Donald Trump that kicked off a massive debate. It's really the mystery at the heart of what we're looking at today. So the big question is, what does the data actually show when you dig into it? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to go step by step through the arguments and the evidence that our source for this explainer, the Young Turks, presented in their analysis. Okay, let's get into it. So first up, we have to start with the core claim itself, that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, was intentionally manipulating jobs data for political reasons. According to the source, these are the three pillars of his rigged theory. The claim is that the person in charge was biased, that they put out fake, glowing job numbers right before an election to help his opponent, and then, after the election was over, they quietly revised those numbers way, way down. Okay, so before you can even judge if a system is rigged, you kind of have to know how it's supposed to work in the first place, right? So that's exactly where our source, the Young Turks, begins their investigation. How does the BLS actually do its job? And to shed light on this, the source highlights this quote from a former labor secretary, Elaine Chao. And her point is pretty crucial. The person at the top, the commissioner, isn't supposed to be down in the weeds, messing with the raw data. The whole system is designed to have a firewall between the political appointee and the career professionals who actually compile the numbers. So the source breaks down the process to show how these layers of separation are meant to function. You have the career statisticians. These are nonpartisan government experts. They're the ones who compile everything. Then, an expert commissioner, someone with serious credentials, reviews it and gives the okay. And only then are the numbers released to everyone, the public, the markets, all at the exact same time. And this is why this whole thing is such a big deal, and why it's not just another political squabble. The source stresses that financial markets, Wall Street, news outlets like CNBC, they absolutely depend on this data being neutral and accurate. Billions, maybe trillions of dollars in investments are made based on the belief that these numbers are legit. All right, so let's move on to the heart of the investigation. Let's follow the numbers. What did that jobs report, the one that came out right before the election, actually say? And right out of the gate, the analysis points to this massive contradiction. The claim, remember, was that phenomenal numbers were released. But what the source finds is that the numbers that actually came out were considered really weak. In fact, they were widely described as dismal at the time. Now let's walk through the source's timeline, because the details here are key. On November 1st, just before the election, the report comes out showing super weak job growth, only 12,000 jobs. On top of that, numbers for previous months were actually revised down. At the time, conservative media reportedly called it a catastrophe and good ammunition for Trump. Then what happens after the election? Those October numbers get revised, but they get revised upward. That's the complete opposite of the claim that they were rigged to be high and then secretly revised down. Okay, so this is where the analysis from the source takes a really interesting turn. It moves beyond just fact-checking the numbers and starts asking a question about motive. The source presents what it sees as a central paradox in Trump's logic. He had been very publicly pushing for a specific economic policy, and this jobs report, as weak as it was, could have actually been the key to helping him get exactly what he wanted. So here's the logic the source lays out. Step 1, Trump's goal was to get the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates to boost the economy. Step 2, the Fed usually only cuts rates when they see evidence that the economy is slowing down. And step 3, the low job numbers in that report, that was the exact evidence they would need. So the very numbers he called rigged against him were, according to this analysis, the perfect argument for the policy he wanted. So what happened when this apparent contradiction was pointed out to him in an interview? Well, this was his response. The analysis from the source frames this as a pivot, a way to avoid connecting the dots between the data and his own goals, and instead turn the criticism back onto the Fed chairman. So, how does the source, the Young Turks, resolve this whole puzzle? They argue the answer isn't some deep, complex political conspiracy.
They think it's something much, much simpler.
The source's final theory is basically this, that the reaction wasn't strategic at all. They argue it comes from a basic misunderstanding of the economics and that a paranoia about being politically attacked blinds him to reality. In their view, it's just an emotional reaction to seeing low numbers that completely overrode any kind of strategic thought.
And the source pushes this idea further, stating their belief that the issue is a refusal to, and I'm quoting them directly here, do just a tiny bit of homework on these concepts.
The source boils its whole theory down to this pretty blunt take. The reaction was driven by ego, not strategy. As they put it, because it affected his ego and he's a dumbass.
And with this final, very blunt quote, the source wraps up its analysis, basically arguing that there is no deeper strategy to uncover here.
The source leaves us with this final thought to chew on. When you have a powerful political narrative crashing head-on into cold economic data, what is it that really gets revealed in the end? And it suggests that sometimes, when you dissect a complex theory, you don't actually find a conspiracy. What you find is a revealing look into the perspectives, the understanding, and the motivations of the person making the claim.